to be the greatest. It's something that we all strive to be, however, there can only really be one. So who will it be?
25 Dormigi, you may sit atop the rankings, but atop the podium, this supernova mountain lies Mia. Congratulations.
One more to finish the job off. Dormigi, the entire world is behind you. Dormigi, how have you done that? You are at 2 stocks down, only 30% taken, and you still win that game. How am I still here commentating your back?
The race for number 1 this year has been closer than ever in Smash Ultimate's history, and this has kind of led myself and many others to speculate and wonder who will be number 1. So after doing diligent research, really spending time looking into the frames and even touching grass, I have concluded exactly who will be number 1 at the end of the 2025 season. But before I get into that, I'd like to ask a quick favor from you. If you could please subscribe if you guys enjoy the videos, because only 5% of the people who watch are subscribed and 95% aren't subscribed. So I feel like if you guys enjoy the content, just subscribe. It means a lot to me and you won't miss the next videos. Okay, so I feel like for most people's ranking of the number 1 and 2 slots, they kind of have it between 2 figures. But I think it's not fair to just eliminate everybody else. So I did kind of go through the rest of the top players and see who kind of had the best shot of also being into this conversation, and who it does seem like is the closest to make it there is Acola. So is Acola kind of being excluded wrongfully from this conversation and maybe the one to actually be in the lead for the rank 1 position? This was something that I did a lot of research on. Acola would go on to start his season quite cleanly, actually getting a first at Mayasuma and then getting second at Genesis, but then he would go on to get a 5th place at Battle of BC, which, all things considered, it is an underplacement, but it's not horrible. The main downside of this loss was really the fact that he got eliminated by Ouch, which is a pretty big upset if we're being honest. I feel like that Battle of BC performance is kind of a theme for Acola this season, where he, although having some of the great placements of the 2 that are really being compared for this rank 1 slot, he also just has some performances that are not necessarily ideal. This really would go on to be a theme, because he would actually get eliminated 10 rounds before he was expected to at Level Up Expo and get 33rd at that event, which is just not ideal if we're being real with you. But what I will say is he would then go on to have his saving grace in the form of Kaguribi 13, the biggest tournament in the game's history, and it will never be surpassed. There's just not enough time left in the game, and he won it. So that almost like cancels each other out. So that is a big win. To win the biggest tournament ever, that now kind of propels him back into the conversation, I feel. The only thing to kind of note with this is that if he was gonna be ranked 1 from that win, it would have already happened probably in the first half year ranking. But the fact that he got ranked 2 when he had just won that, now for the full year ranking, it's not looking like that's gonna happen. And although he has done some good things for himself, like getting that massive first place performance at Umebora, he didn't even make it to top 8 at Seibugeki. And then also, when he came to the United States for Riptide, he would go on to get 7th, which really isn't horrible, but he got 3-0'd by Wrath, which isn't ideal, you know, and he lost to Syrup in the Steve Ditto, which again is not what you're striving to do if you're Acola. His final major that he would go on to attend this year was going to be Kaguribi 14, where he would go on to get 4th place, which really is not a bad placement. But again, this is the conversation for number 1, bro. For number 1, you got to be really, really good. You have to be really good. 4th might not be enough, you know? For these reasons, I just don't think Acola is really in the conversation. And if you're still kind of hoping, then I think after I talk about the next 2, you will kind of see like their results just kind of far exceed his everywhere we go. Dormigi and Mia. Now on to the 2 contenders that people really are thinking will be, one of them is going to be number 1. Like, we just know that. And interestingly enough, the main thing that is separating these 2 players from one another is that their attendance is pretty different. You know, Dormigi has only attended 9 A-tier or higher events. However, Mia attended 18 this year. So he's literally attended double the amount of tournaments that Doramigi has. Doramigi really doesn't go to tournaments that much. So it is a big discrepancy between the two there, but results-wise, they're quite similar. How I'm going to determine who is going to be rank 1 is based on a point system, so it's not really biased. I'm just going to go through different stats and give whoever has the better stat in that group a point, and whoever has the most points is going to win. There are going to be 6 different rounds, and one of them should come out as the victor in the end. As I stated earlier, Miya has attended 18 different major events in 2025, whereas Doramigi has only attended 9 of them. And of these 9, his worst placement has been a 5th place, which he got 2 times. One at Sumabato 15th anniversary, and then the other is going to be at Kagaribi 13. Miya, on the other hand, has done a little bit worse. Miya got a 33rd place at Level Up Expo, which is the same placement actually that Acola got, tying, his fellow Japanese man, and Doramigi won that tournament. So it is kind of a gap there when you think about it. It's actually a lot tighter of a race than you may think, but this round is for sure going to go to Doramigi. Doramigi's worst loss this year was to Ken, who is ranked 26 in the world. And Miya's worst loss was to Mars, who is ranked 56 in the world, which, let's just be real, bro. Mars isn't the 56th best player in the world, bro. Like, let's just be real. He's top 20, bro. Like, this guy was ranked top 5 in the world before. He beats players like Light consistently still. This isn't like, just a random guy. So I think his real worst loss is probably Omega, who is in the late 40s of the ranking. So, again, still going to be worse than Doramigi, and I am going to have to give that round to Doramigi for sure. Now on to probably the first thing that people think about when having this conversation of rank 1. Who won more? With Delta 10, Symphony Gaming Fest, Delta 11, Supernova, Riptide, and Sumabato, Miya won 6 A-tier or higher events in 2025. Doramigi, on the other hand, won 3 A-tier or higher events in 2025. And typically in this scenario, I would do it percentage-wise, like who won a higher percent of the amount of events that they won. However, since Doramigi attended half the amount of events that Miya did, and he also won half as many events, that means that they both actually won the same percentage. They both won 33% of the majors that they were in attendance of. So it's kind of a tie, but I am going to give it to Miya because it's harder to win 6 than it is to win 3. Like, it's harder to be consistent across 18 tournaments than it is across only 9 tournaments. Wins are awesome and all. However, what if somebody's so close and it's just like, oh, well, we're not going to count it because they didn't win? So how many times did somebody make it to the very end of a bracket? How many top 4 placements did they get? Doramigi got 7 top 4 placements at A-tier or higher events in 2025, and Miya got 12 of them. But once we mention the fact that, Miya attended 18 and Doramigi only attended 9, that means that Miya had a 66.6% chance of making it into the top 4 at any major tournament he would attend, whereas Doramigi's would be a 77.7% chance, which is even higher. That's a staggering number, and that means I have to give this round to Doramigi. A king is someone who rules, and a king is nothing if he can't even keep his kingdom in check. So what many people may wonder about is how does each of them do ruling over their peers within the top 5, namely the other 3 players, Spargo, Acola, and Hurt. Doramigi this year has a 6-11 win rate against Acola, a 8-7 win rate against Hurt, and a 3-2 win rate against Spargo. This makes his overall win rate against these 3 17-20, which percentage-wise means he beats the other players in the top 5 about 46% of the time. Miya, on the other hand, has a 10-16 record against Acola, a 12-1 record against Hurt, and a 0-1 record against Spargo this year. This is going to make his overall score against the top 5 22-18, which is a 55% win rate, which is going to be not only higher than Doramigi's, but actually positive. That means most of the time when he's fighting against the others within the top 5, he is beating them, which means I have to give this round to Mia. Now we get to finally talk about what everybody really is here to talk about, head-to-heads. Who beats the other one, right? And unfortunately, this one really isn't as pretty or as close as you may hope for it to be. Mia has a 5-2 set count against Doramigi this year. And although that might not sound that bad, lifetime it's a 16-2 set count. So that's a little tough, you know, that's tough. And that is one of those things where it's like, can Doramigi be number 1 if he's just getting farmed by this guy? Now on the bright side, it looks like he's learning it. He took the past 2 sets they played. That's awesome, right? It seems like he's figured something out. But when he loses, man, he loses. Like, I don't want to see that Corrin ever again. Please, bro, please. All of this being said, I obviously do have to give this round to Mia. So this was actually supposed to be where the video ends. But as you can clearly tell, there is a tie. So we need some way to decide this. And it's funny that this happens because this really goes to show just how close this race actually is between these two. I know people kind of initially may have favored one over the other, but when you check all the stats, it is pretty close down the middle. But this does mean that I'm kind of forced to use a forbidden metric that people are going to be pretty upset about me using, and you're not really supposed to talk about, but you gotta be real in a situation like this, and you have to kind of be decisive with these things. That is going to be... This is essentially measuring how often do players run into their worst case scenario, and how well do they do when they're put into that position. When speaking about this, we kind of have to acknowledge that really Doramigi's like worst case scenario is running into Mia. And even that, he seems to be figuring out. I mean, he beat him, double eliminated him the last time that they fought each other. So he's clearly figuring something out there. But when we look at Mia, it's like he can kind of get pretty lucky for a lot of these victories he's running into. He keeps running into players that he tends to beat. He runs into Doramigi a lot, like at Supernova, like at Riptide in the Grand Finals. Both of those Grand Finals, he ran into a player he's got a great score against. He's running into Hurt, who, you know, Snake obviously does really, really bad versus Mr. Game & Watch, and that's just an ideal situation. But he's not running into Acola as much. And this is not really something you can say about Doramigi, because even when he's running into the worst case scenario, he's winning it. And a lot of the time, he's not really running into his best case scenario. He'll run into Acola and beat him. He'll run into really anybody. I feel like they'll put him into anybody and he'll beat them. Again, his worst placement is 5th, bro. I didn't even mention some of Mia's placements. Yeah, Mia got the 33rd. If it was just that, that's not that bad. But it's not just that. If I were to add another metric to this, it would be like number of bad placements. But that's kind of hard to measure. Like, what's a bad placement? I don't know how to exactly state what that is. But Mia definitely gets more of them. Like, I'm just gonna be honest, okay? You've got Mia getting a 7th place at Coulon SP16. Mia then would go on to get a 9th place at Battle of BC, and then he would go on to get another 7th place at Genesis. Like, he is pretty often getting outside of that top 4, top 5. And that's something that's not really even being measured at all in this, but I think definitely needs to be stated because, again, the worst thing that Doramigi got is 5th. This guy's getting 7th, 9th, 7th, 33rd. Like, this guy's never... Doramigi hasn't even gotten outside of 5th this year. That's got to decide it right there. That's got to decide it. And I know Mia farmed him for a little bit, but I think it's mostly luck, right? And Light kind of talked about this a little bit on Lights Out. If you are like a pretty good player who can make it pretty far in the bracket, and the best player in the world is somebody that you beat, you're now the best player in the world, or you'll look like it at least.
Being good versus these people can allow you to get further in the bracket, you know? So it's kind of like,
Sure.
It's kind of like how I think Acola could, you know, like beat Mia. I don't really know what it's been like lately for them, but I always kind of felt like, you know, like Acola could beat Mia, but like Dorimiki's going crazy. So if Dorimiki's going crazy, then Mia's grand finals are going to be free as fuck, you know?
I got you.
Because you're always going to beat this person, right? It doesn't really matter who it is, right? Like, if Light's the best player in the world, but Mars beats Light every time, then Mars is now the best player in the world, because every time they meet in grand finals, he's beating him. So Mars is winning all the tournaments, and all we measure it off of is winning, right? So he must just be the best, but there's so much luck that goes into brackets. If Mars is running into Mia, he's chilling, right? Because Game & Watch loses. But then if Mars running into Dabuz, it's over. But Dabuz retired, right? So there's so much in Smash that can kind of seem a certain way because the bracket just happened to unfold a certain way. But I think that's some of the unpredictability there. But when we look at consistency, I feel like that spells out so much of it. The fact that this dude Doromigi can attend all these different tournaments, get put into all these weird characters, and the worst he gets is 5th? To me, that's got to be my number one. If you guys refute that, if you guys think it's Mia, if you guys agree with me, or if you just think it's some random person. If you think it's Tamapi Daifuku, leave that down in the comments below. I'm just curious to hear. You know, it might be Tamapi Daifuku. I just love that guy's name. But yes, please be sure to like and subscribe if you guys enjoy the videos. Please consider becoming a member because it really helps me out. And I shout out my members in the credits of the videos. And here, like my member, Wally Winker, shout out so much. Thank you for all the support you give me, and thank you to all of you guys really for watching the videos. The support means the world. My last video is getting close to 10K views, and I just put it out a couple days ago. And arigatou gozaimasu. See ya.
I also teach the game. If you want to learn from the guy who got 25th, metafy.gg/@tweak.
Damn it, bro.
I promise, bro. I'll do better. I promise.